As all eyes will be traded on the Supreme Court. Well, I'm not alone in studio. I am joined by Professor Alfred Omenya. Very good morning. Asante sana for joining us this morning. And Jimmy India, karibu sana.
Good morning.
Well, can we say that it was raining petitions yesterday? We'll take a look at what's on the dailies as we have this conversation, because I guess this is certainly what all Kenyans are looking forward to. So this is what's on the front page of the Daily Nation. Legal fight. Was it stolen? The smoking gun. In bombshell petition to the Supreme Court, Raila Odinga exposes what he says was a well-oiled scheme to rig this year's election, including the recruitment of hackers to infiltrate the results portal and alter forms, and the inflation of votes in favor of Ruto across the country, and especially in his strongholds. For those fraudulent schemes, the Azimio leader wants Ruto's win invalidated. This is covered in pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I think we'll just get to some of the elements of this story very quickly. So, disparities. The former Prime Minister alleges there are marked differences in a sample of the forms 34A. So this is why Raila Karua want the court to quash Ruto's win. Let me get that. All right. So this is what we have at a glance. Let me get that correct. So after the 9 petitioners submitted their complaints yesterday, the Supreme Court is supposed to determine the petitions within 14 days from the date of filing. The Supreme Court Rules 2017 state that the petitioner should furnish the respondents with the court papers within 1 day from the time of filing the petition. The respondents ought to file and furnish the petitioner with their responses within 4 days. The petitioner should then file the rejoinder within 1 day after the respondents provide their responses. And should any of the parties wish to make applications asking the court to issue orders that he or she believes may help their case, the rules require them to file the application and further furnish the other party within 1 day from the date of filing of the response to the petition. So that's just a sample of exactly what is expected to happen in terms of the process at the Supreme Court so far. But I just want to get and pick your mind on where we are in terms of the developments so far. Prof, I'll begin with you. What are your initial thoughts so far, you know, with regard to where we are in terms of this presidential election petition?
Yeah, thanks, Zainab. I think there's a very interesting point in history, because I kept saying that the 2 parties to the election, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, and of course the arbitrator, IBC, had material information that you know, have not come to the public domain,
right,
in Kenya and for Kenyans. And of course, people have been wondering exactly what happened in this election. There's one side that says, you know, the election was the most transparent we've ever had, you know, free and fair, and you know, conducted in accordance to the law, and that appeared to have been the case. And then, of course, we have Azimio, people actually saying that this is the most fraudulent election they've ever seen. And on the other hand, it was not very clear why Azimio was saying that. Apart from you know, some insights on the last phases of the election, we also had the issue of the 4 dissenting IBC commissioners coming out and saying that the last bits of this particular election was not done in a transparent way. We even have new words like opaque, you know, trending.
We had to take out our, you know, dictionary to find out.
and calculators and so on.
Right.
Yeah, but I think 2 quick points here, that this election was always close, and whether the information that we had was the most accurate information or not, at least the one thing that everybody agrees who attempted to tally from Form 34As was that it was a very, very close election. And then Chebukati tells us in the first bits of the election that this was not a forensic audit. And I think teams, both sides, were pretty keen to ensure that none of the votes actually disappeared. And then, of course, we had this big section, the opaque section,
right,
of the tallying. Yeah, so I think everybody has been waiting with bated breath to hear what exactly...
Did you foresee that situation that would perhaps set the stage to bring us to this state that we're in today, a presidential petition?
Definitely, I think two issues. One of it was that it was closely contested.
Right.
And I think in a situation where it's closely contested, then you find that there are many factors that could change the result, as has been highlighted by Azimio's side. Number one, I mean, you need to actually have all votes counted and verified in situations like those. You need extreme transparency, for example, in the manner in which technology is used. You need concurrence of the commissioners, for example, and also of the agents in terms of the process. So, of course, my point here is that when it's very close, then you need the election to be as transparent as possible, and any party, anything that is not you know, clear or transparent and so on would actually lead to you know, the aggrieved party moving to actually file a petition. So definitely, I mean, and of course the dissenting of the IEBC commissioner particularly, I think, gave very strong optics and indication that Azimio was going to contest this. I think if the election was not that close, maybe, you know, some of these things could have been ignored. But I think because it's close, it's only fair that you know, Azimio comes and verifies whether they actually indeed lost, which of course they've said they don't believe they actually lost. And then, of course, the court process will be able to verify these things, including just, you know, verifying the results tallying, which is one of the prayers that Azimio has put on the table. Right.
Let me get Jim's, you know, also initial thoughts on where we are. I mean, we saw truckloads of evidence coming into the Supreme Court, and of course, that is quite, I would say, you know, a humongous amount of evidence that, you know, the petitioners have.
The petitioners had a week. It's interesting how in a week they could gather such evidence. And reading that petition, one of the things that strike you is, at what point did Azimio realize that things are going bad? Because as we've always said, they were winning this election up to a few hours before 3 p.m. on that day. So at what point did they realize that they were losing it? But they raised some valid questions. If indeed the chair did announce results before 27 constituencies were announced, then there is a problem. If indeed they say that the postponement of elections on the eve of election in 2 counties, which they consider to be their strongholds, then indeed there's something there to be asked. But the most difficult thing, which I find interesting in this petition, is the hacking claims. There's some interesting hacking claims there. There's a laptop which was found at the tallying center, which they're calling the DCI as expert witnesses to come and tell the court what they found on that particular laptop. There's some issues with the Venezuelans as well that they're talking about. So in all, I think there are valid reasons. There's a question of voter turnout. To what extent? What did we use to tally the final 50.49 and 48.8, whatever? And they're calling into question those things. But I think ultimately it is, we Kenyans are glad that we get an opportunity to actually know whether our will was overturned or whether indeed our will, as was projected at the ballot, that is exactly what happened on the other end. Because in a democracy, the vote matters. In a democracy, it is paramount that if the people vote, then the voice of the people is heard and the will of the people is upheld. And so this is another step forward in our electoral process to just verify that. If our constitution requires that our election is verifiable, then this is part of that verification process. And as Prof has said, one of the prayers that they're asking is that there's a retallying and re-verification of those of the votes, so that they can be declared winners in their opinion. Of course, we do not know what that would entail. But I think those are some of the initial thoughts. This presents to Kenyans an amazing opportunity and a step in the right direction for 2022 elections. All
right, let's just see right inside the Daily Nation, of course, much deeper into that. So there's also another petition here. And activist Okiya Omtata has also challenged the presidential election results, arguing none of the candidates managed to get, managed to get, I think, the 50.1%. Okay, I think I've lost that. Maybe we can fix that, but I will be getting my newspaper here. Thank God I have a hard copy. So let me get to that. Okay, there you have it. All right, so activist Okiya Omtata has challenged the presidential election results, arguing that none of the candidates garnered 50% plus one vote as required by the Constitution. Omtata said in a petition filed at the Supreme Court that an analysis he has done reveals that no candidate garnered the 50% plus one vote as required. And he's also saying, of course, he's the Busia senator-elect, saying that there was no basis for the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati, to declare any candidate as duly elected president. He alleges that Chebukati did not factor in the voters who voted manually, who total at least 140,028. So according to Omtata, when the 113,000 spoilt ballots is added to the 14,213,000 valid votes being the correct sum of the alleged results of each of the 4 presidential candidates to get a total voter turnout of 14 million and the rest, the untallied votes are about 140,028, I believe. So this is another quite an interesting issue, and I think it will behoove and fall upon, you know, the Supreme Court to sort of bring their minds together to make sure that the numbers are actually at the center stage of this whole, you know, petition, because I'm looking at the numbers, and also Azimio's petition also focuses largely on a number of issues when it comes to the votes, Prof.
Yes, I think there's a whole lot of issues here, and at the center of it is really the numbers that are used to calculate the 50.4 by which DP won.
Right.
And of course, Omtata brings in another very interesting issue here, the number 69,000, which we've actually discussed here before, because that is the number that if you removed from the votes declared, then you would actually force a runoff. Nobody would reach the 50 plus one. Omtata also brings in a very interesting issue here of the spoiled votes, and another number that is you know, critical and is aligned with the Azimio petition is that number of the votes that were yet to be counted. So the question has been that what number exactly was used to calculate the 50 plus 1, and could that number be arrived at in this sort of situation where you've got votes that are not counted for, you've got spoiled votes as it actually were, and so on and so forth. So definitely the Supreme Court will have to look at this particular issue and then determine what sort of numbers then that would be used you know, to do the maths. As Omtata says, if you remove the spoiled votes, then DP does not make 50 plus 1 in terms of the calculations of this.
But I think that was also a matter in the 2017 election, the spoiled and the votes, and how they're part of the whole summation of the entire, you know, votes.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, even this time around, first we have the spoiled votes right at the polling stations, and we also had those ones that were removed during the tallying.
Right.
And as we're told, basically and rightly so, you know, on the basis of the law, that those would just be removed. They wouldn't be corrected and so on, and they would only appear in the Supreme Court in case of a petition, and you know, their role in the election actually have to be determined. That is what Chebukati said. But again, as it is, the emphasis here is that in a very tight election, any change of these numbers can change the result.
Right.
You know, whether it's the number of the turnout, whether it's the number of the votes yet to be counted, whether it is the numbers, you know, that if were considered or not considered would force a runoff and so on. You know, we are actually seeing that just a small shift in numbers would actually give different results. And that's why, I mean, for me, it actually makes sense that, you know, the Supreme Court addresses itself to these issues so that the number issues is clarified once and for all.
Right.
At what point does IBC, for example, you know, announce a winner in a situation where the results are very, very close and not all the numbers are in?
Right.
Right.
That will be interesting. So there's also another petition here. Why Kuria wants Raila's case dismissed. Chama cha Kazi Party leader Moses Kuria and Mbeere South Member of Parliament Geoffrey Kingangi have filed a petition at the Supreme Court also seeking the dismissal of Raila Odinga's suit challenging Deputy President William Ruto's win. The two want the Apex Court to dismiss the case filed by Odinga, the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate, based on claims of violence and election offences that occurred at the Bomas of Kenya ahead of the declaration of Ruto as president-elect. They argue that Odinga and his Azimio coalition caused the violence and thus should not be granted the orders they are seeking. Jim, is this valid? I mean, there's grounds to throw out a petition. I don't know. I know.
So thing
your own,
thing is, Moses Kuria is entitled to this, but you read this and it sounds a bit comical, to say the least. That at the heart of the matter, we are talking about the election. We are talking about the integrity of the vote. We are talking about the process and the outcome of that particular election, and whether or not the will of over 7 million Kenyans was indeed determined elsewhere. And then you have an individual who comes and says, no, you need not to listen to that particular case, because on the day that the results were announced, there was violence. One is, to what extent was there violence? We saw some chairs being thrown around, we saw someone being whisked away, but we have no collection or information. Nobody recorded any case with the police. There's no case in court. There's no case recorded with any police officer that there was violence that led to bodily harm or something like that. So I think it's one of those cases, in my opinion. I don't think all these petitions will make it.
Right.
Ultimately, there are 9 petitions. I do not think all of them will make it. This is one that I think will.
And in fact, I wanted to get I wanted to get there because we'll be having Arnold Maliba, who at least also is someone who understands the law much deeper. So 9 petitions, 14 days.
Yes.
Right. So that's quite a tight timeline for the Supreme Court. I mean, what do you foresee that will happen?
One of the easy things to do is some of those petitions will be merged. For instance, you look at Okiya Omtata's petition, Raila Odinga's petition. There are similarities there, and they could merge them and then sort unique prayers together. You have, for instance, other individuals who are also coming in. You have Safina Party, who are also contesting. You have Reuben Kigame, who's also coming in to say that his rights were denied because he also wanted to run, and his rights to run were denied. So some of these petitions are going to be merged by the court. Some of them are going to be dismissed by the court.
Right.
Yes.
So it will depend on what the weight or the content and quality or within which the petition, the substance of the petition, Prof?
Yes, definitely. I think it depends on the quality and the actual prayers, because at the end of the day, in all these cases, the clarity of fact and law, is right at the center of this, and then also the evidence presented to the court.
Right.
Yeah, and otherwise every Kenyan will just appear there and say, look, I mean, I think my rights were violated and so on, and the Constitution Court should actually determine that. Yeah, so definitely the court will actually look at them and see the ones that meet the threshold, and as Jimmy has highlighted, some of those would, in fact, I think almost all of them are going to be merged with the main case, which is the Raila Odinga versus IBC and others. Yeah.
Okay, just moving on a little bit away from that. We also do have all those petitions filed yesterday. All right, so Raila, we have watertight evidence on rigging. This just brings us into at least some of the details within that petition. Well, away from that, just getting into, let me see. Well, today technology has failed me, unfortunately. But we'll try. Deferred polls will be held next Monday, declares IEBC. Candidates have been given up to 48 hours to voting day to conduct their campaigns, and that is for the various positions. The polls body has scheduled postponed elections in 8 electoral areas, including Mombasa and the Kakamega governor's races for the end of this month. And the IEBC has also allowed candidates in the affected areas 4 more days of campaigning ahead of the polls. There was a question on whether, these particular elections would have sort of tilted or changed, you know, the election in any way whatsoever when it comes to, you know, the numbers. Do you see any change that you would perhaps bring in terms of, you know, the numbers?
One of the prayers, one of the issues raised in the Azimio petition is that IEBC deferred polls in Mombasa and Kakamega on the eve of the election, and without any cause, without giving any proper reasons why that was done. And this, they claim, affected the voter turnout in those two areas. And in fact, they cite voter turnout in 2013 and 2017, and how it was lower in 2022. And truth be told, I think we have said this time and again that normally, one of the races that really excite people at the county level is the governor's race, more than the presidential race. And so in a case where, because remember the rumors that are going around Kakamega was that elections have been postponed. It was not that the elections of the governor had been postponed. Elections had been postponed. The governors are very good at mobilizing people at that level. And the moment you walk into your polling station, you will have to vote for all other candidates, including the ones that you're not as excited about. So indeed, there was a way that postponing elections in these two counties, Azimio claimed that these are their strongholds, and they have generally gotten more votes in these areas in the past. And so postponing elections in these two areas affected, and they are going to prove to court the margin of to what extent it affected them. But it did affect them. And they're asking the question that, does the IEBC have what is the legal basis? Because if the Constitution states that an election shall be held on the second Tuesday of August, a general election, but then you have two counties that did not hold the general election on that second Tuesday without proper reason or just cause, what does that then speak to the integrity of the overall general election? So it's going to be a case to be determined by the Supreme Court.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to what Jimmy is highlighting there, the other question that will come, which is actually a question of law, is under what circumstances can IEBC, you know, postpone elections? Yeah, because I mean, if this passes without some direction from the Supreme Court, then IEBC will actually, you know, use all sorts of trivial reasons, you know, to postpone elections. Yeah, because definitely, I don't think, you know, the framers of the Constitution and even the IEBC Act envisaged a situation where just you know, clerical problems and issues within IEBC would be a basis of postponement of elections. So yes, I mean, I think the bigger point here is that although the bigger prayers that the parties are asking for in this particular petition, there will also be some of those smaller issues, but which add up to that bigger challenge that you know, Azimio is actually putting on the table. In this particular instance, under what circumstances can IEBC, you know, postpone elections in any electoral unit?
Because, Prof, how is that different from back in the days when it was the president would decide the date of the election, and it was the president's secret ballot, you know, their secret card, and they would wake up one day and say the elections will be next week. How different is it with IEBC waking up one morning and saying, unfortunately, we will not have elections in 3 counties, in 4 counties, for whatever reason? If we're giving such sweeping powers to an institution, then we are going back to those days where for you to vote, it was dependent upon an individual or an institution, whereas the Constitution and the framers, as Prof said, already decided when we should vote and how we should vote.
Okay, we'll get much deeper into that as well. So deferred polls will be held next Monday. Another story here, Chebukati Cherera clash in IEBC split. This is once again Vice Chairperson Cherera yesterday openly accusing her boss of running the commission in a secretive manner. The divisions within the polls agency continuing to play out, with the chairman publicly clashing with his deputy in their first joint meeting after 4 of the 7 commissioners disowned the results of the presidential election. It was during a meeting with candidates from the 8 electoral areas which had the elections postponed. IEBC Vice Chairperson Cherera hung a boss, Wafula Chebukati, out to dry over the cause of the initial postponement of the election. Well, after being invited by Chebukati to explain to the candidates what informed the first postponement, Cherera put aside the official script to lament the secretive nature of IEBC operations. So then we still go back to, you know, the issue of the 4 commissioners who, you know, dissented and said they've disowned the declaration of the results by Chebukati. So, Prof, when you look at these 4 commissioners and their respondents in the Azimio petition, what weight do they add to this petition? Is it quite weighty?
Yes, I think there are a number of issues here, and although they're dissenting and they're disagreeing, but whatever their actions are, basically bring to question very weighty legal issues, and I know different sides have chosen. They've cherry-picked, you know, what aspects of both the Constitution and the IBC Act they want to you know, to highlight. And one of them, of course, one of the things we've been highlighting in this particular sitting is the Maina Kiai ruling,
right,
that basically explains that, you know, again, the framers, the Constitution never envisaged to give, you know, such sweeping powers to an individual. And that brings into spotlight the issue of the office of the chair of the IBC Commission, and how that office relates to the other commissioners and to IBC generally. And one of the things that you know, has been discussed, and lawyers have discussed it, and is an argument, is actually that although Article 138A gives the chair the responsibility to declare elections, it does not give, that is not a sole prerogative of the chair, because the same constitutional Article 138(3) actually vests the issue of counting, tallying, verifying, and declaration, particularly declaration, to the IBC.
Right.
And the argument has been that this is a matter of detail. So you find that the Kenya Kwanza people say actually that generally that you know, the commissioners have no role at all in declaration of results. And of course, the Azimio, as one would actually expect, basically referred to these famous Maina Kiai and others versus IBC 1997, saying that actually the chairman does not have powers to act, you know, in his own right. And I think this is something that is really at the center of this case in terms of how does IBC, you know, first conduct elections, and how do they do the counting, how do they do the tallying, and so on, and what is the role of the chair in relation to that.
Right, so it's brought to the fore some sort of grey area when it comes to at least, you know, the roles of the commissioners, the commission itself, and the kind of powers that, you know, the chairperson of the commission must have. Exactly,
because the question that that is being asked is that in a situation where there's dissent of, say, all the commissioners, can the chair proceed as an individual to actually declare these results, or even do tallying and so on? And I think this would be something that would be definitely canvassed and argued in the courts, that fine, at what point did Chebukati start acting unilaterally, and is that you know, constitutional? Is that even legal in the first instance?
Right. Should we have been, you know, concerned at the very beginning when, you know, there was a point that the four commissioners, right before this, you know, public disagreement that we saw, you know, taking issue with some of the issues that were happening within IBC. Remember when the ballot papers were coming in and they said they were not aware, and they were just informed right after that. I can see also, you know, they were saying that at some point they were not given, you know, some information since Monday last week when I beg your pardon, let me just get that. I think we have Cherera talking about, they've also complained about being sidelined in the appointment of returning officers amid claims that they were blindsided by the arrival of the first batch of the ballot papers. Should we have been concerned when they were raising these concerns back then, Jim?
We should have actually been concerned the day Akombe resigned. That is the day we should have been concerned in 2017, because she raised some serious issues and we all dismissed her. We said, nah, you're a coward. You go back to the US, so you have dual citizenship. We Kenyans will deal with our issues. But now, four commissioners are again saying that, look, even we had no idea when ballot papers were coming. We did not inspect the Kakamega and Mombasa ballot papers because we were not aware until the D-Day. That brings to question, then what is their role? If procurement decisions are being made, then the procurement decisions need to be made by the commission. If now, again, the vice chair is coming back and saying the same thing she said, that they cannot own up to that challenge because they were not even aware that the ballots are coming. They did not inspect those particular ballot papers. Then it was a commission that was being run by one person. Now, to put this into context, when the president-elect, the current president-elect was making his speech at Bomas, he said, Chebukati is a national hero. Now, in the Azimio petition,
Right.
they are asking the court to actually recognize the decision by the 4 commissioners to disown those results as upholding the constitution. So we have 2 sides of this team that are taking 2 individuals differently
Right.
and saying that they upheld the constitution.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to take a short break. But before that, this is what is also on the front page of the Standard. Raila, my case against IEBC, and the prayers to the judges. Number 1, the scrutiny of the rejected and spoilt votes, after which the totals be used to compute the final tally of the presidential results. Number 2, scrutiny and forensic audit of all equipment, system and technology used by IEBC in the presidential election, including the KIMS-KIT servers and website or portal. IEBC be ordered to tally and verify the count and declare Raila and Karua President-elect and Deputy President-elect. As an alternative of declaring Raila President-elect, the court should find IEBC as constituted incapable of presiding over and rendering a proper presidential election. Number 4, declare that Ruto was not validly elected. The court to order the election was not conducted in accordance with the law. Find that Ruto was not, did not meet the constitutional requirement of 50% plus 1. Number 7, order IEBC to conduct a fresh presidential election in conformity with the law. And number 8, declare Chebukati unfit to hold public office and that he has brought dishonor to the country and indignity to the office of the chair of IEBC. So you also have, you know, Mr. Wafula Chebukati's character brought forward in this petition. I don't think we'd seen that before. Previous petitions were, you know, respondents was the entire, you know, the entity, IEBC as a commission, not a single, you know, yeah. So this will also be very interesting to see what Azimio is praying for and how the court will rule. Let's take a short break. We'll be back and have this conversation a little much deeper.